Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video, and we're quickly going to talk about Black Widow and the fallout from its box office performance in its second weekend within US cinemas. Now, just to revisit the history of this, Black Widow of course is the latest superhero movie within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we all know the backstory where initially it was meant to be released back in May 2020, it got delayed due to the pandemic, and when it was reset for release on July the 7th of this year, it had a simultaneous day-to-day release with the Disney Plus streaming format where people could view the movie for a premium fee of $30. Now, in its first opening weekend, it had, for me and for a lot of people, a great take of 80 million in US cinemas, and this coupled together with an overall 158 million worldwide total. Now, Disney Plus for the first time really released their streaming profits, where they estimated that Black Widow made around 60 million from the premium fee and its subscriptions. So we now come on to the second weekend of Black Widow, and as expected, overall it had a massive drop, around 67%, where it grossed 26.3 million, coming in second place behind Space Jam, which came first at the box office around about 31 million. Now, there's been lots of debate and inquest about the decline of Black Widow within its second weekend. We've had recent statements from both movie theatre chains and box office analysts who have blamed the simultaneous Disney Plus release with the premium fees I mentioned before, taking away a lot of the box office from Black Widow. And to be honest with you, this was obviously going to happen. You know, many people, me myself, I've made multiple videos on this channel which you can check out. I'll leave the links within the description, where I've constantly raised the concerns of releasing a movie theatrically and also digitally at the same time. I've always stated that the same day streaming releases with movies won't be sustainable in the long run. If we go way back, I said this initially when Warner Brothers decided to put out their whole slate of 2021 movies simultaneously theatrically and with their HBO Max streaming platform. I said a second video when they initially released the date for July 7th for Black Widow to go on release, and then I made a supplementary video shortly after that when I stated, should Marvel have really gone back on their decision? And this was primarily because we had seen most recently with the likes of A Quiet Place 2, The Conjuring 3, Mortal Kombat, and most recently, of course, Fast 9. They were all really making big successes at the theatrical box office. So this was telling you that people were starting to be more comfortable going back into theatres overall. And I mentioned within all those videos that Black Widow really should have stuck to a theatrical only release. Now, you could raise the argument that yes, the reason that studios do go for the premium fee is because with the streaming revenue, of course, they keep a much larger percent of the gross overall. They keep near to 100%, because when you release movies theatrically, of course, you're paying the distribution and you're paying the theatre chains as well. So you only take a certain percentage of the overall gross. But the opposite argument to that is once you provide that copy online, it's more open to access and in particular piracy. So in many ways, you're kind of doing yourself out of more earnings. Even though you collect a bigger share of the revenue, you're kind of limiting how much revenue you make, because a lot of people are trying to access it for free. This is why I've always stated that even now in this pandemic times that we're in, the theatrical release is still the most profitable gain in terms of making money back on your movie projects. And with Black Widow overall, the movie is really now available everywhere. If we look at it, even if we dismiss the concept of piracy, there are multiple clips everywhere on YouTube showing the opening credits, the fight sequences, the multiple scenes between Natasha and Yelena, the end credit scene, the post end credit sequences. I'm pretty sure if you dig deep enough, you can put together an abridged version of the movie, maybe 30 to 40 minutes if you collate all the clips together and watch the best parts of the movie overall. So if that's the case, why would you go back for a second weekend, a third weekend in theatrical when you can just sit back and watch most of the clips online? And whereas normally with piracy, when you try to download the movie, it's normally like a bootleg version. The audio isn't that great, and it's normally like a 480p resolution. But here with Black Widow, all of these clips that we're seeing online is all pristine HD quality, great video, great audio. So you're really cannibalizing yourself in terms of the amount of money that you can make by giving people the freer option to view the movie without paying for it, in terms of going back theatrically and spending the money. It just seems like common sense to me and for a lot of people. Why would you go and spend X amount of money where, again, especially if you're going with a massive group or a family to go and watch the movies, where you're having to pay for travelling costs and certain food and merchandise and multiple tickets, when you can just sit at home and watch at your own leisure? You can pause it anytime you want to. You can watch it on your own in the comfort of your own front room, or even in your bed in front of your 50, 60, 70 inch HD or 4K television. Right, it just doesn't make any sense to do it day in day streaming as well, because you're just taking away the exclusive nature. And to be honest, I anticipated, like many did, a massive drop in its second weekend, and I also anticipated that a lot of people were going to jump on this movie even more, stating that this is a failure within the MCU and that the era has come to an end. And I already anticipated this criticism I've stated before, but again, you have to take each project as it comes, and despite this second weekend drop, it still doesn't signal the MCU, and I've mentioned in multiple videos that the real litmus test is going to come with Shang-Chi and Eternals. That's when we will really see how strong the brand is going ahead in phase 4 and ongoing after that as well. So another question people will ask is, well, if we're saying that all of this same day streaming affected a lot of Black Widow, why wasn't that the case with Godzilla vs. Kong, which has been a massive success, which is coming now close to grossing nearly 500 million worldwide, and that as well was simultaneously released on US cinemas and HBO Max streaming as well. But what you have to remember with Godzilla vs. Kong, it was actually released internationally a couple of weeks prior to it going on US cinemas and HBO Max streaming as well. So it had a chance, even though it was a very small window, to make its money theatrically and become an exclusive release for everybody to go and watch theatrically first before viewing it on the streaming platform. And what you also have to mention with Godzilla vs. Kong, and also with Fast 9 as well, is that they've both opened in China, where that was the bulk of their box office, and Black Widow has yet to open in China. So you could trade that off in terms of assessing the overall box office within Black Widow. Now, of course, both Godzilla vs. Kong and Fast 9 have made around about 500 million or just over that. Now, Black Widow is currently sitting around 263 million worldwide. So maybe you could factor in, well, once it opens in China, then maybe that will increase the box office as well, where it could get close to 500 million over time, because most of the MCU movies are very popular in China, as they are all over the world. So that's something we do have to cater, though you could argue again, the caveat to that is, now that you've opened it with streaming and provided the online copy, again, even audiences in China, they're going to have the opportunity to get pristine online copies for free. So when it does release in that territory eventually, it's not going to have that same hype level as what it would have had if you just kept it to theatrically only release. So that's the dilemma, and again, the fallacy, I think, with this same day streaming format. Now, people can argue that the streaming model, you get that initial big hit, as what we saw with this release, where they announced around 60 million in profit overall, but that's not sustainable in the long run. It doesn't guarantee you repeat business week to week, and that's the real strength of a theatrical opening, because you can have a big massive box office weekend where the initial fans of the franchise go to watch it, and then what happens is the positive buzz from that big opening weekend transcends to general audiences, and it gives the vibe that because this movie made a lot of money, it must be a good movie to watch. So then that can attract them more to the movie. But you won't get that now, because you get that initial big hit from fans that have viewed it online and streaming, and then when that positive buzz comes to general audiences, they think to themselves, well, why pay extra amounts to watch this movie when I can just get the copy for free online, or use certain methods to get a pristine HD version of the film online? So that's the problem, and where the mistake I think was made by Marvel, as I made in multiple videos, as to why they should have kept Black Widow a theatrical release overall. Now, some people can factor that Black Widow, Again, wasn't an essential part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's a prequel. We already know Natasha's fate from Endgame, of course, and that we've had future stories within the MCU forwarding the Phase 4 narrative. So, of course, we had Spider-Man Far From Home, and we've had the Disney Plus shows WandaVision, Loki, and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So, people argue those seems like much more of must-see, essential pieces of the MCU puzzle because you're taking it in the forward continuity, whereas Black Widow was telling a story that maybe wasn't essential or necessary because we all agreed that this is a movie that we should have got 4 or 5 years ago within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But despite that, people were still excited enough to go and watch Black Widow to guarantee it having an 80 million opening weekend. So there was still a lot of hype, there was still a lot of interest within the Black Widow movie, and many analysts have stated that had it just stayed theatrical only, it may have gone on to gross maybe even over 100 million, some have estimated maybe even 120 million in its opening weekend, and then if you factor in maybe a 60% drop from that weekend, you're still talking about maybe a 50 million second weekend, and then the third weekend maybe you make 25 million, and then shortly after that. So that would have increased the overall profit gain from the theatrical release. So we really debate about it, whether Disney, how much did they care really about Black Widow? Did they really use it more to promote their Disney Plus service as opposed to try and maximise a lot of the profits and gain from the individual movie itself? Did they see it as well, like many people, as just not an essential part to the MCU because of the fact it's a prequel movie as well? You have to factor in all of these arguments, but at the end of the day, for me, I think the primary cause for this decline in the second box office weekend was the fact that it was simultaneously on release, and as well as being open to privacy and even not even piracy really, the fact that the movie was just accessible everywhere, primarily on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, any other platform. You know, you could view the movie in so many ways now. It just really took away the urge to go to theatres for a second weekend overall and damaged a lot of the repeat business, and that's not what you want if you're going back to theatrical releases. So overall, I'm not surprised by the second weekend, but still, despite this, I'm not denouncing that this is the end of the MCU. As I mentioned before, we will get a bigger picture of that when we look at Shang-Chi and Eternals overall. So just to recap then, I just think this was overall a mistake, as I've made in multiple videos. They should have waited, they should have stuck to their guns and kept it a theatrical release overall. And of course, the more successful Black Widow would have been in the theatres, the more that would have promoted the MCU brand, and the more that would have helped it going forward for the future Phase 4 movies as well. So that's what we've got to factor in. The more successful these movies are, the more it helps the next one coming along. So that's what we've got to factor in as well when we were talking about this. But those are my overall thoughts on the recent declining second box office weekend for Black Widow, and how I feel, and a lot of people have deemed the primary cause for that decline was the simultaneous release with the Disney Plus streaming platform, and that overall I don't think it's a sustainable format release. I think eventually we're going to see a tailing off with this, because if we look at other movies that Disney are planning to release, like Jungle Cruise, for example, starring Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, that is not going to have the same breakout viewers that Black Widow did in terms of its Disney Plus. And also, it's very telling, as many have pointed out, is they haven't released the second weekend streaming figures for this release. So that's overall very shady in itself. So I think eventually, as the pandemic begins to wind down, more people are vaccinated and theatres start to open in more of a bigger capacity, we will see a shifting away from this day-to-day streaming. And we know that a lot already with a lot of releases, that there is already a 45-day window being set from the theatrical release to the streaming platform releases as well, which I think is very good, because again, you're giving theatres more chance to be successful, more films the chance to be successful, and that's great for the industry overall. So hopefully this will be the beginning of the end. If there is a beginning of the end, it won't be necessarily for the MCU as such, but it'll be the beginning of the end of this day-to-day streaming platform with a premium access of $30 to watch a movie, because I don't think that's sustainable in the long run, and I don't think it helps theatres or movies or the entertainment industry in the long run either. So those are my thoughts and feelings on Black Widow's second weekend underperformance. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about Disney Plus and the strategy of premium on demand fee of $30? Do you think they should stop it now, or do you think they should persist with it? Do you think it benefits fans, theatres, entertainment in general, or do you think it's just about Disney looking out for themselves and trying to boost their own profits and shares and have more control of the earnings that they get from the content that they release? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit and like those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.